Onde tem cultura, a Vale está. No poder criativo que nasce dos palcos, orquestras, das artes, das ruas e dos museus. Na valorização das diversas identidades brasileiras e na preservação de memórias. É valorizando a cultura que crescemos e evoluímos juntos. Instituto Cultural Vale.
A inteligência artificial não consegue definir em uma imagem do que vão ser feitos os próximos 100 anos. Porque o futuro não vai ser feito de uma imagem só. Vai ser feito dos que dizem sim, de quem não aceita um não como resposta e de quem pergunta, por que não? O futuro será feito de você, que assim como o Itaú, é feito de futuro.
Ministério da Cultura e a Associação Casa Azul apresentam 22ª Flip, Festa Literária Internacional de Paraty. A Flip conta com benefício da Lei Federal de Incentivo à Cultura, PRONAC 235060, e possui acessibilidade para pessoas com deficiências física, visual e auditiva. Tem patrocínio Master, Instituto Cultural Vale. Patrocínio Ouro, Itaú, CCR e Suzano. Patrocínio Prata, MAC Móveis, Eletronuclear, O Globo e Sesc. Patrocínio Bronze, Sebrae e Globo Livros. Parceria institucional, Prefeitura de Paraty, Secretaria Estadual de Turismo do Rio de Janeiro e Museu do Território. É uma concepção Associação Casa Azul. Realização, Ministério da Cultura, Governo Federal, Brasil, União e Reconstrução. Obrigada e boa mesa. Flip, o encontro da literatura com a cidade.
Eu sou caiçara daqui de Paraty, né? Nascido e criado aqui, de família da parte da minha mãe, toda de caiçaras aí. Então eu tenho esse legado, né, de trazer uma arte com viés mais de uma mensagem mais ecológica, mais cultural, né, mais ancestral, né? O que mais me traz a sensação de liberdade, além da pintura, é andar de bicicleta. Assim, você com o seu corpo, a sua máquina, né? E não existe o seu combustível, é a sua energia. Eu chamo minha bicicleta de bike ateliê, inclusive, né? Porque a minha relação com a bicicleta ela é tão antiga quanto a minha relação com a arte, com a pintura. Eu acredito que a arte ela é a prova de que o ser humano ele se desenvolveu no planeta, né? É o processo de desenvolvimento da evolução humana mesmo. Eu digo que você pintar uma paisagem ao ar livre, você está absorvendo, né, as cores e o ambiente com o seu próprio espírito, né, com os seus próprios olhos. Você não tem uma referência, aquilo sai diretamente dentro de você. Então é um trabalho 100% humano, né? Não existe uma influência, né, de uma tecnologia, alguma coisa do tipo. É uma coisa espiritual mesmo.
Flip, o encontro da literatura com a cidade.
City and literature.
Boa noite, Paraty.
Good night, good evening, Paraty. Today, with this roundtable, we are reaching the end of our second day of our full program. It's such a pleasure. It was a beautiful day, yet another beautiful day with amazing stories. This last table with Atef and Julia, if you weren't able to attend, please watch it on our YouTube channel. It was an amazing conversation. This roundtable we're going to have now, it is a subversion of the success formula. We always have these conversations, but today we have an experience to maybe listen to stories. This is something very dear to us. It's Zé Kleber. This is something very important. It will celebrate this great character of the city of Paraty, and who always brought many stories and storytelling. We're going to hear one of the stories from and about Paraty. So I want to wish you all a wonderful evening. This is Rádio Novelo Apresenta.
Uma das frases mais famosas do João do Rio é essa: planar é ser vagabundo e refletir, é ser basbaque e comentar, ter o vírus da observação ligado ao da vadiagem. O que eu não sabia até
What I didn't
recentemente
know until
é que esse
recently
último
is
vírus
that
tem
this
uma história
virus
longa
has a
e
long
inglória.
and inglorious history.
Que
The definitions of vagrancy, they change a lot over time, but basically what we have is the idea that the ones that have no income, they are forced to work. This means that idleness is allowed only for the rich. The person who told me this story, which confounds itself with the story of Brazil, is Paulo Terra, a professor at UF. For some time, he has been researching on vagrancy, the laws that said that if you were not very rich, if you were not able to live of your income, you needed to work. Yes, it is an issue even today. Even today, vagrancy is illegal. Okay, technically it's not a crime exactly, it's just a misdemeanor. But what's important for our story today is that you cannot do it, according to Article 59 of the Code of Misdemeanor. An old and weird law that is still in force, hidden in the middle of a modern code like a sleeping dragon. So Article 59 is someone habitually indulging in idleness while being valid for work without having an income that ensures sufficient means of subsistence or providing for one's own subsistence through illicit occupation. Yeah, that's it. If you're fit to work and if you have no income and if you're not doing anything, that's illegal, okay? So Paulo told me about this sleeping dragon because the truth is it is not so asleep. And over the centuries, this concept has been like a wild card of repression in the history of Brazil. It was very impactful to understand that through the criminalization of vagrancy, there are other elements included other than racism and the issue of gender and sexuality. And I think that we can follow the chronology. In Brazil, the official start of the rule, you cannot do nothing, came in Philippine ordinances at the turn of the 17th century. Well, in the ordinances, the following was said: we command that any man who does not live with his lord or with a master, or has no trade or any other master for which he works or gives in his life, or does not go about negotiating any business of his own or that of others, 20 days from the day you arrive in any city, if in those 20 days you don't get a job, well, that this person be publicly arrested and flogged. And if he is a person who cannot be flogged, let him be banished to Africa for a year. 20 years to get a job. After that, flogging, prison, and maybe deportation. And the big issue here is that in this case, this was an element very used by colonization. So people were imprisoned because of vagrancy, but they were sent to the colonies also. Not only that, because in the case of Brazil, for instance, the colonial Brazil, many people went to jail for vagrancy. They were sent to Angola, for instance. So, cut to Brazil, 19th century, one of my favorite places to go. We are at the second half of the century, and the great debate is about the abolition of slavery. Because the great discussion at that time was, first of all, the abolition. It needs to be done in an immediate way or in a gradual way. On the other hand, within this idea that has been very much discussed in the Brazilian parliament, it needs to be progressive. If it's progressive, why? And because black people are not ready to work, which is a racist justification. Not only that, they are not prepared for freedom, but also they have an atavistic idleness in them. And a natural idleness, it means that if they were not forced to work, they will not work. And this is very important when we talk about abolition. We talk about the criminalization of vagrancy. Both things walk hand in hand. But if you were paying attention until now, you will have noticed that vagrancy had already been criminalized for some centuries. Why were they talking again about vagrancy? What is the big discussion? Is to think that a specific legislation for the black population, those that were previously captives, well, many times we do not realize that in many abolition-related legislation, there are many specific articles on vagrancy. Yes, in the free womb law, for instance, there is a specific clause on vagrancy. Yet it says that slaves freed by virtue of the law would remain for 5 years under the inspection of the government and would be obliged to hire their services under penalty of being constrained if they lived vagrants to work in public establishments. The sexagenarian law was a little bit different on its turn because it regarded the elderly, people who could already think of not working. But even in this law, they mention vagrancy. So slaves freed by the Emancipation Fund would be forced to remain in the municipality where they resided for a period of 5 years. Those who were absent from their domicile would be considered vagrants or apprehended by the police to be employed in public works or agricultural colonies. It is almost being sentenced to open prison, isn't it so? Having to stay in at the same place, being going to jail if you leave. Every time you see abolition, there is a hidden figure behind it, which is vagrancy. So how did these racialized and racist ideas are going to be very very important at the moment of abolition because they, in a certain way, will be the basis for criminalizing black people and the idea that they need to be forced to work. And then the years go by and the vagrancy law evolves, unblocking more powers. A criminal code of 1890, there is a new disposition. Well, according to vagrancy law, it was not enough to work. If it was an illicit occupation, you would still be considered a vagrant. Then the first criminal code of the Republic included another line in the list of exceptions, a prohibition of occupations that are manifestly offensive to morals and good customs. Prostitution, for instance, has never been illegal in Brazil. It wasn't an illicit occupation. So if you wanted to take a sex worker to jail, you need to say that her work is manifestly offensive to morals and good customs. And this distinction left a mark in the Portuguese language. If I ask you today, what is vadia, a slut? What does it mean, vadia? Vadia is a synonym of bitch, of prostitute. But with the man, it's different. The man that doesn't work, that doesn't do anything, well, it's just a vagrant. In the beginning of the Republic, the vagrancy law was expanded, and there were new ways of covering other aspects. Another new thing that became illegal was not having permanent residence. And think of it, at least in Rio de Janeiro, in the turn of the century, the number of poor people that the government itself was evicting from their homes wasn't small. So when João do Rio visited the detention facility in the city around 1912, he found alongside respectable murderers, known thieves, in the pitiful troop of recidivists, naive children, commercial boys, newspaper sellers, and an enormous number of beings that the negligence of the city authorities turns into criminals. Well, if it's neglect or public policy, you tell me. So, back to the text, almost all of them are included either in Article 393, crime of vagrancy, or in 313, physical offenses. The former cannot be imprisoned for more than 30 days, the latter, being minors, more than 7 months. The trials, however, do not give costs, and the city authorities let the formation of guilt sleep in peace, while in the indolence of the cubicles and in contact of crime, boys that days before were honest take the most complete course of crimes and infamy in living memory. End of citations. So vagrancy, far from being an exemplary tool to control the population, must have been an important factor in the formation of criminal classes that Paulo Barreto found so fascinating. That's high-quality public policy, you can see it. And speaking of crimes and infamies, another thing that wasn't criminalized and that became criminalized through the vagrancy law was faggotry. And forgive me my choice of words, I am part of the community, because the criminal legislation of the empire, well, it had decriminalized homosexuality that was present there in the Philippine ordinances. Well, meaning at the colony it was forbidden to be gay, but in the empire it was no longer forbidden. But of course this was a conduct that they wanted to repress. So let's leap into the 70s and 80s, 20th century. We are in the military dictatorship, and vagrancy was running amok. In São Paulo, it is very known, the case of Chief of Police Richetti. They had a police department that was specialized in vagrancy, and Richetti was a very famous Chief of Police because he would organize raids on weekends in places of gay sociability, in which sometimes they would arrest 300 to 500 people. Well, maybe vagrancy wasn't running so amok, but I would like to say that also arresting someone for vagrancy on a weekend, well, that's not fair.
A lei da vadiagem não era a
Vagrancy
única
law
que era
was not the only
utilizada para
one that
reprimir a
was used to
população gay.
repress the gay
Mas ela era
population, but it
muito
was
útil nesse
very
sentido.
useful in this sense.
And this
Was also used in relation to the indigenous population. So during the dictatorship, they create a Krenak reform school, which is a prison that was created in the region of the Doce River Valley in Minas Gerais and lasted from 1969 to 1972, in which were incarcerated not only Krenak indigenous, but indigenous from many different tribes. There were cases of vagrancy and drunkenness. There were also cases of indigenous people that were in land disputes and that had their transportation paid. The state knew about it to be sent to the reformatory.
Já faz anos que ninguém é preso
It's been
só
years
por
that,
vadiagem.
no one is
Dragão da vadiagem
arrested
tem
only for
caído num
vagrancy.
sono
The
cada
dragon
vez
of
mais pesado.
vagrancy has been
Mas de vez em
sleeping
quando,
more
quando
and
é
more, but
conveniente,
sometimes when it's
alguém vai lá
convenient,
e
someone
cutuca
goes
ele.
there and wakes it up. In 2022, the City Hall of São Paulo launched a tender named Smart Sampa for the purchase of facial recognition cameras. And in the tender, it was said that those cameras would, one, recognize the color of people, and two, they would identify vagrancy.
Por todos os motivos do
Well,
mundo,
for
rolou uma grita
many
quando
reasons,
esse
there
edital
was a cry out
acabaram
when this
refazendo o
tender was
texto.
launched, and they ended
Mas
up
não deixa de
rewriting
ser
it.
contraste
But it is a
curioso.
curious contrast, nevertheless, because we are speaking of what is considered as an example of a modernity in terms of repression technology, the cameras with the facial recognition technology, but we are still using the discourse of vagrancy.
A lei da vadiagem
So vagrancy
é que nem
law
aquela
is
ferramenta
like that
antiga
very old
encostada no
tool
canto do
that you
depósito.
have
Ela já está obsoleta,
in your warehouse. It's
enferrujada.
already obsolete,
Provavelmente vai
rusty.
dar tétano só de
Probably
pegar
you're
nela.
going to get tetanus only by
Mas
touching
entra
it.
século,
But
sai século,
century comes and century
Estado
goes,
brasileiro
and the
olha pra
Brazilian
ela,
state looks at this
não
tool
consegue jogar ela
and is
fora.
unable to
Até tem projetos de lei desde o
simply
final da
throw it
ditadura para
away.
mudar isso.
There
ela
is
já
even
prestou
a
tanto
bill
serviço,
since the
né?
end of dictatorship to change
Pode ser
it,
que ainda
but
sirva
it
pra
was
alguma
so
coisa.
useful in the past. Maybe it could
Melhor
still be
deixar ela
useful
ali.
for something, so let's keep it there.
Bem-vindos ao Rádio Novelo
Welcome to
Apresenta
Rádio Novelo Apresenta,
Flip.
live at Flip.
Eu sou a Branca Vianna.
I'm Branca Vianna.
Essa
This musicist, composer, multi-instrument player, wonderful, that will be with us today throughout the whole presentation is Stela Nesrine. She has already written many soundtracks for all of us here at Rádio Novelo.
E junto dela,
And with her
tá a Bia
is Bia Guimarães,
cuidando das
and
várias
she's
vozes desse
dealing with all the
episódio.
different voices of this episode.
E essa primeira
And this
história,
first
vocês
story,
sabem,
you
né, que
know,
eu tô contando a história, é a
the
Flora
first
Thomson.
story was by Flora Thomson Deveaux.
Aliás,
Actually, and if you're listening to the English interpretation in English, there is a very familiar voice for the Rádio Novelo listeners, because it's my sister there in the
Ana
booth
Viana junto com Cristiano Santos.
with Cristiano Sanchez.
E eu já tive nessa cabine
And I've
muitas
been in
vezes,
that booth
muitos
for
anos.
many years.
E tá muito bom,
And
porque
it's
é
wonderful,
assustador,
but a bit
assim,
scary
aqui,
also to be here
vendo
on
o
stage,
público que a gente normalmente
watching
só
this
imagina.
public that we normally just
Mas quando a gente ficou
imagine.
sabendo
But
que o
whenever we
homenageado da
heard
Flip
that
ia ser João do Rio,
the
a gente
tribute
ficou
would be
muito
to João do
animado.
Rio, we were super
Porque isso que ele
excited.
fazia, de
Because what
ouvir
he
as
did,
ruas,
you know,
de
to listen to the
captar
voices of the
as
streets, to
pequenas
try to
grandes
find the big
É isso que a
stories,
gente tenta
this is what
fazer
we try to
toda
do
semana
every
no
week
Rádio Novelo
at Rádio
Apresenta.
Novelo Apresenta. So when we had the invitation to be here with you at the main stage, we took a deep dive into João do Rio to inspire ourselves. This first story by Flora was a short version of the 2023 Apresenta that we had to include it here. But all the other stories that you're going to hear from this point forward, they all new. They will only be aired on the audio apps next week. So we tried to find stories about the street and the street souls of everything that is never heard, never seen, that you not even think about as much as you should. And our next matter is very, very close to all of us here today. And we will have Vitor Hugo Brandalise telling the story. Have you ever tripped in the streets of Paraty? Well, let me know. No, I'm not even going to kid around this. There are lots of stones around here, but maybe I'm in the midst of people that are super experts and athletes. But every time I come to Flip, I'm once again surprised of how difficult it is to walk around these streets. Like everybody's here, but you can't even see anyone because everybody's looking down all the time so that you won't trip. The other day, I was talking about this with a guy here from Paraty, Jefferson Nubile. I've seen tourists falling because it slips. Well, everyone, right? So if it's difficult to me that I only come here once in a while and I have no issue in terms of my mobility, can you imagine for a person on wheelchair or even someone with maybe a little a car, or maybe an elderly? And it's difficult. If you only come here for Flip or to walk around, can you imagine what happens from who lives here? My mother broke her nose the other day. But what can you do? It is a city that is listed, and the whole charm is to feel like you're traveling in time. You feel that each one of these homes, these churches, these stones is there untouched. This pavement, as we know today, started to be built in the 19th century, so 2 centuries after the foundation of the city. The city was founded in 1667. Paraty was developed and became a trade point and the golden coffee cycle, and then it went downstream. It stopped. For many years, there wasn't any good roads here. It was like, just dirt roads, and it was difficult. So then they opened Rio Santos during the 70s, and Paraty was rediscovered. It was a lost treasure, this beautiful city that had stopped in time, preserved in the colonial style. And all this pavement, so-called pé de moleque, cobblestones, does exactly that. You wouldn't want to have everything asphalted, right? Paved. So let's go back to Jefferson Nubile, and I was talking to him the other day. Jefferson is born and raised here in Paraty, and here, when he was maybe 8 years, he said between 78 and 81, there was some construction in the historical center for us to build a sewage. And for more than 1 year, the streets were completely overturned. And this sanitation was something that was very important. In fact, Jefferson was very close to his house, and it wasn't even a small one. It would look like a subway, There were people crushing, putting down pegs, spikes, pumps, pumping water out of the streets. You had tractors. It was lots of sand. You could only walk, on the sides of the street because they were just excavating everything. You had these pegs, steel pegs, and then you would have the backhoe. And I remember even the people in Paraty were a little bit pissed with the whole thing because whenever they repaved, it wasn't the same thing. Jefferson saw the stones of the historical center being removed more than once. And then they weren't placed the same way as they were before, everything in the same place. These stones were really big and heavy. So the guys would get the crushers and would crush the stones. So they were crushed. The cobblestones were broken, truly broken. And there was more. It was very controversial at the time, this whole idea of theft of all these stones. So everybody sort of knew that those who were stealing were people that were outside, for instance, granites, and people that were here in vacation rooms and trying to refurbish their homes. So people from São Paulo and foreigners were trying to stealing these stones. At the time, the municipality was trying to add with stones that were brought from waterfalls, for instance. And this is why it's so bad to walk around Paraty, because it's so slippery. So you mean this is like rolling stones? It was something that would not work to be a pavement? Yes, exactly. So Jefferson was letting me know about this, and then other 4 people confirmed it, including people from the National Institute of Listed Buildings in Brazil. Before the 70s and the 80s, what we had in the past were cobblestones that were done for the traditional cobblestone masonry for the 2 centuries. So if you stop to think about it, it makes total sense. I don't know from where we got the idea that the past is a mess. Maybe in the 17th century or the 18th century, 19th century, it was already consensus that the smoother the pavement, the better. Better for your wagons, better for people to walk around. Yes, the other day, by chance, I was seeing this old picture of Paraty, and the stones are very well put, well placed, nicely paved. This is Marli Cardoso. She was born in Rio, but came to Paraty as soon as she got married. She's been here for 50 years. And then, in the end of 2020, Marli had a heart attack. And then when I came back, I heard the news. I was diagnosed that I had lost my mobility, the mobility on my legs. So from my breast down, I became paralyzed. I wasn't even in shock because I was just happy to be alive. It was, on the winning streak for being alive. So she thought a bit curious that all of a sudden she thought that she was a person with a disability. She was the chairperson for more than 15 years of the local association to protect exceptional or people with disabilities. But now she was living it. So until I was maybe 4 years ago, I was not a wheelchair user. And then all of a sudden, I said, "Oh my God, are there no wheelchair users in Paraty? Are there no wheelchair users in Paraty?" Of course there are. There are a number of people that have disabilities in Paraty, but they never come around because Paraty will never allow them to leave their homes. They have no way of walking around in these public places. You can't get there. How are you going to get there? Are you going to push down a wheelchair? No, that's not going to happen. You're never going to go to the historical center. There's no way. The historical center? No way. It's impossible. It doesn't exist for people on wheelchairs. It doesn't exist. But Marli, like Jefferson, she saw another historical center way back then. The city is not the city that it was in the past. Everything was nice and tidy when I got here. Before, you were even able to walk. But then they built the sewage, and then until now, I don't know where the sewage went. And a number of stones were left behind. So there was the original cobblestone, authentic one, and it was stolen. It was looted. And then in its place, another cobblestone was placed. This sort of fake cobblestone. It was a fake legacy. So when we were walking around, and I was going to talk to André Cavaco. He was head of the IFAM, the Institute of Listed Buildings in Brazil. So I asked him, what can we do? And he said, this pavement has lasted for many centuries because it was constantly maintained for many and many years. Now it says that, you can't touch it because it's listed. And well, that's not true. The truth is the maintenance has to be done. So the stones were already changed in the past, we know, and more than once. Because after the sewage, there's also the installation of underground cables. So the stones are taken out again, and when they replaced, we see that many of these stones are new or another type of stone. So there's no way why we shouldn't improve this. And André knows this deep down because he's helping now. IFAM, this institute, is trying to support it and trying to do it the right way, and for a good reason. We're going to develop an accessibility route into the historical center. Basically, there's this perspective of having a route that will come from the entrance of the historical center, where you have the chains, the Ponte do Pontal, and it will go through the Matriz Square, and then in the future it might reach in even other points, such as the churches, the Church of Santa Rita, so forth. So in the study to prepare this accessible path, IFAM and the mayorship of Paraty saw how big the issue was. More than half of the stones were stolen in this refurbishment. So it was halfway historical cobblestone, and even worse. So it is a fake historic. Well, Vitor, I believe that at a given moment, yes, in the story of Paraty and other historical centers in Brazil and the world, interventions were made that could be considered as a fake historical intervention. I'm not saying this about a fake historical in the cobblestones of Paraty, which is a UNESCO heritage center. It's IFAM. The first step to do that was taken. So then, Vicente Mineiro. Say, hi, Mineiro, how are you? Yeah, great, how are you? Vicente Cardoso Mineiro, he is a master cobblestone masonry. He's specialist of rebuilding it according to the traditional technique. He learned this in Diamantina. And when he was invited to be part of the group that will discuss the accessibility in Paraty, they already gave him the issue. What stone are we going to use? So I saw the different qualities of the stones, how to prepare them, and I saw even the pavement around the city. Mineiro and the architect of the municipality, that Leonardo Xavier, to find this route, they started to choose Miracema, São Tomé, Pedra Madeira, different types of stones. But one was too dark, the other one was too red, the other one was too frail. And they even tried, using the current ones, this whole salad of granite with all the other stones from rivers. But, nothing worked. There's no way we can use it. And then we decided to use with the Moledo stone. And then we reached the standard that is durable, it's lasting. This had never been done in Paraty, at least not in this last century. Being careful about the stone and the people that actually walk around the streets. It's a historical knot that is being untied. There was a lack of interest in the beginning because people don't understand. Maybe people don't know what IFAM is, what are the standards. And then we said, oh, no, don't do that. No, you don't do that. It's worthless. But in this case, it's worthless. It's not only you're going to use a stone that has to do with the whole heritage, the Pedra Moledo, that is also easy to walk around. They want to follow the traditional technique with very thick stones that are put on sand without any kind of concrete underneath. They're testing it in this small area here, from Ponte do Pontal to the Matrix. All the rest, they will only be able to do it in the future. And it's not because of any the issue regarding the legacy. For this longer route, they first have to do sanitation. Yes, you heard me right. Still today, 2024, the historical center of Paraty is not linked to the sewage. Each area has its own fossa. And didn't you open the sewage in the 70s? Yes, exactly. They even put down the pipes, but they were unable to connect it because there was no water treatment station. 45 years later, still no water treatment center. Well, since you're going to do it, you better do it right, thinking about things that might last. And with one detail, the work that Mineiro was invited to do is of historical preservation, but it's also of accessibility. Oh, but you're going to decharacterize Paraty. Well, like this auditorium here, walking around with the clothes we use today, using our cell phones, everything is not part of history. It is a city. It's not a scenario. You're not, shooting a film with costumes. So this whole idea of adapting historical cities into accessibility isn't nothing new, and Paraty won't be an exception. Around the world, it's the same thing. The Colosseum in Rome today already has accessibility for wheelchair users. In Jerusalem, there are a number of little tiny stairs all around, and right next to it, modern ramps that have the same wide stone of the rest of the city. For many years, Paraty was abandoned, frozen in time, after it lost its economic importance. This isolation gave the city the face it has today, and much of what we all love in Paraty, but some of these features don't need to stay. Lack of sewage is anachronic. Lack of accessibility, too. The past is not a mess, but it cannot be the single map for our presence.
Vitor Hugo Brandalise.
Vitor Hugo Brandalise.
Bom, agora a gente queria trazer para
Now
vocês
we
uma
would like
história
to
sobre
bring
uma
to you a
paisagem
story
bem
about a
diferente.
very different
Porque aqui em
landscape,
Paraty,
because
a
here in
gente já
Paraty we
espera
already
que tenha muita
expect that
história
there is a
embaixo
lot
das
of history
pedrinhas.
underneath
Mas tem
the
ruas por aí,
cobblestones,
bem
but
menos
there are
conhecidas, com histórias por
very
trás que a gente nem
less
imagina.
known
E
streets
agora, com
in other
vocês,
places with
Natália Silva.
stories that we can't even imagine. And now I bring to you Natália Silva.
Em Volta Redonda,
In the city of Volta Redonda, in the countryside of the state of Rio de Janeiro, there is a neighborhood called Bom Jesus. The streets have are named after places that are very far away. Goa in India, Macau in China, Guinea in the African continent. And then between Angola and Algarve's streets, there it is, a narrow street that already starts very steep, where houses and walkways need to fight for space, and those that have legs or cars to get to the end of it can see far away from up there. And this street is named Priscilla Fulgoni. My sister Priscilla Fulgoni, Priscilla Silva Fulgoni, yes, it was him, Ricardo Fulgoni, who named the street. Yes, the street up there on the hill in the neighborhood of Bom Jesus in the complex of Vila Brasília, the street in which we were born and raised, where my grandmother has always lived and where my sister would take me for a walk in the neighborhood, and she was a friend of all neighbors. And Priscilla was the only sister of Ricardo, the younger sister. And when she was born, he was going on 3 years. And he said that the first memory he has is her. That's the first memory I have, exactly when she arrived. Maybe because it was very strong for me, the birth of a sister, the arrival of a baby. And from that moment on, his life changed. And only after Priscilla arrived, Ricardo understood how much he needed her. Nowadays, I know the meaning of it because I was diagnosed with autism when I was already an adult after 30 years of age, and I was a child that could not connect to the world. His relationship with his mother was very hard, and she couldn't understand, and she didn't try to understand why Ricardo was the way he was. Actually, it wasn't only their relationship that was bad, but the family life as a whole. When everything looked like falling apart and everything fell apart very often with shouts and bad words said by my mother and domestic violence, my grandfather beating my grandmother, I would stay very quiet under my bed sheets and I would say, well, let's make a small tent, always holding my sister's hand. And that's how he was able to survive this private hell. My sister was my escape valve, and she taught me many things. When I was already 14, 15 years, she taught me to make a shoelace or tie my shoelace. And, well, things that he should have learned from adults were explained to him by Priscilla, who was patient enough to do it, and she did many things for Ricardo. And if you know a little bit of street names, you know that no street in Brazil could be named after someone who is still alive, and Priscilla is no longer alive. Well, let's start from the beginning. It was the end of an afternoon in March 2006. Ricardo was leaving his work and he was going to his great-grandmother's house to have dinner before going to college. He was studying law. When suddenly I see the brother of my grandfather, and he was shouting, "Let's go, Claudinho," because Claudinho has heard Priscilla. Claudinho is a fake name. He was Priscilla's boyfriend, and after some time, he started to present some jealousy episodes, and they broke up and something like that. Nothing that would draw the attention of anyone. So Ricardo could not understand how Claudinho had hurt
Inclusive, quem
his
apresentou
sister.
os dois foi
And
ele.
it was
Ele
Ricardo
era
who
amigo
introduced the two
do
of them.
Claudinho.
He was a
O Ricardo
friend
ficou meio
of Claudinho, and
anestesiado.
Ricardo
E quando
was
ele
a little
voltou a
bit
si e conseguiu sair
anesthetized.
na
And when
varanda da
he
casa, atrás do tio avô e de
recovered
outros
his
parentes que
senses and
estavam
was
lá,
able to
ele
leave
viu que a
his
rua estava cheia de gente.
grandfather's brother house, he saw that there were many people in the streets. I went down and there was an aunt, my mother's sister, and I asked her what happened, and she said, "Well, we were told that he killed her."
Nessa época,
At that
a Priscila
time,
tinha ido morar com o pai
Priscilla
deles, em
had
Barra
gone
Mansa,
to
do lado
live
de
with
Volta
their
Redonda.
father in
Ela tinha
Barra
dito
Mansa,
pro pai
next to
que
Volta
queria viver
Redonda,
com
and
ele
she
para
said
poder
to her father
estudar numa escola
father that she
melhor.
wanted to live with
E ser
him to
igual ao
be able to
Ricardo, que
go
tinha
to a
emprego
better school
concursado e estava
and be
fazendo
like
faculdade.
Ricardo, who
Não era só a
was going
Priscila
to
que era o
college and
modelo
had
pro
a job.
Ricardo. Ele era para ela
Priscilla
também.
was not the only role model there. Ricardo was a role model for her too, but she did not have time. It only
A
lasted
Priscila
for a
terminou com
month
Claudinho.
in the new
Talvez
school
cansada dos
when
ciúmes, eu não
everything
sei,
happened.
pensando que ela
Priscilla
queria
broke
focar
up with
nos
Claudinho.
estudos.
Maybe she was tired
Mas
of
como a
his
gente sempre
jealousy,
diz
but
nessas
she was
histórias
focused on
trágicas,
studying. But as
ele
we
não
always
aceitou.
say in tragic
Como se
histories, he did
término
not
fosse uma
accept it,
coisa que se
as if
aceita ou não.
the end would be something that you can accept or not. And then he went to my father's house, and my father's wife was there. He called at the gate, and my father's wife said to her, "No, don't go. You broke up with him." "Oh, no, it's okay. I'm just going to talk to him and end it for once." And he stabbed her 6 times in front of my father's house. At that moment, when I got the news, my legs were shaking. I didn't know what to do.
A irmã dele,
His
16
sister,
anos, tinha
16
acabado de ser
years
morta
old,
por alguém que ele
had just been
conhecia,
killed by
por uma
someone he
pessoa que ele
knew,
achava
someone
que
he
podia
thought
confiar.
he could trust. And I didn't have the courage to go to my sister's wake. And the house where I lived, where we were raised, was in front of the cemetery, and it was on top of a hill, and I was there at home, totally alone, in silence. And I was from there looking at the people who were taking her body to the cemetery, and it was like this that I said goodbye to her. I just wanted to solve the situation. Besides sadness, Ricardo felt that he needed to do something about the situation, that it was his responsibility to do justice to his sister. Well, I closed my fist and I said, I need to solve this. I don't know if I had the illusion that by solving something I would bring her back. I don't know. There were many people in the neighborhood that were offering themselves to kill Claudinho. More than one person came to ask Ricardo where he was, but Ricardo didn't know. And even if he knew, he was not going to tell anyone. He wanted to do justice with a capital J, according to law. The problem is that for justice to be done, Claudinho needed to be found. And there's where we see an almost unbelievable movement, because the next day we got the first phone call from him. Claudinho was calling us at our home. Basically, he was lost. He wanted to know if she was okay, what happened. He did not stay and waited to see if she had lived or not. He escaped. The next day, he called again. And he started calling every day, and not to lose his trust, I started to praise him and said, "Oh, okay, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to get a lawyer for you. I know you didn't do it on purpose," so that he continued calling, because until then, we didn't know where he was. But he was calling from somewhere. If they knew the number, well, we could find him. They could find him. But we are speaking of 2006. It's not like today. You always know who is calling you because you always see the number. But there was a device that you would install next to your telephone, and you could know the number of the person who was calling you. But it was an extra service you needed to pay for. And he called the telephone company and said that he wanted this device for yesterday, but they needed 10 days to install it. And he even tried to explain what was happening. said, oh, we can only do what's possible, but it's 10 days. And I said, no, I need to do it fast. Okay, so he understood that he needed a lot of patience because things were being done. And then I was starting to learn law, and I said, okay, now I need the prosecutor's office. I need to go to the prosecutor's office. I need a piece of paper. I need something to install this equipment. And then 10 days went by, and the company went there to install the equipment, and then the telephone rang. It was him again. We had a Minas Gerais, and for one of those incredible coincidences, Claudinho had forgotten one of his phone books with Priscilla, and Ricardo found the number that they saw on the device. It belonged to one of Claudinho's uncles who lived in Manhuaçu. And I said, okay, he called the police and said that he found out where he was calling from. And, oh, we will go there tomorrow, they said. And I said, no, I can't wait. I will go there now. And then he took his mother and grandparents and his cousin, and they went by car to Manhuaçu, almost 7 hours away from Volta Redonda. When we arrived in Manhuaçu, we went to the police station and we told them about the case. Oh, here's the address, just go there and arrest the guy. And they were shocked. And because they were not listening it from another officer, they were listening it from the brother of the victim, a boy, 18 years old. And the policemen, they were willing to help. Okay, but there's only a problem. We have only one police car and it's broken. Oh, I swear, yes. And then I said, okay, let's just drive by the house and see if he's still there. And then they went there, they drove the car, and Ricardo was hiding on the back seat so that Claudinho wouldn't see him. Yeah, he was simply there at the balcony, and it was a two-story house. And I said, okay, let's go back to the police station. We need to arrest him now. We cannot wait. And then we went back to the police station, and they said, well, the car is not ready. And I said, take my car. And that's how they did it. The police officers, they took Ricardo's car, and they brought Claudinho back to the police station. In the end, finally, he was arrested. And I believe that if I hadn't closed my fist at that time and said, I need to solve it, nothing would happen. Because the state wasn't caring about it. A daughter of poor people, the state doesn't care. During our conversation, Ricardo insisted that everything that he wanted was the enforcement of law. He says that he's devoted to the constitutional text, and in spite of everything that happened, he did not become a vigilante, but a judge. And he is a judge in the state of Paraná today, in 2007, a year after the murder of Priscilla. Ricardo met a city councilor of Volta Redonda. She was very moved by what happened, and he wanted to talk about an idea. And I said, well, I want to pay tribute to my sister. The street was named Street G. There is no HF streets. It makes no sense to name the street G. So let's put the name of my sister. And that's what they did. And today, amidst Goa, Macau, Guinea, Angola, Algarves, there she is. All of those places, even though they are very far from Brazil, they are united by one language, our language. And Priscilla has always spoken Ricardo's language, but she went farther. She was capable of making him communicating with the world and feeling part of it. Ricardo no longer lives there. He left Volta Redonda behind a long time ago, and he doesn't care if years ahead no one remembers who he was. But what he doesn't want is for people to forget who his sister was, and that's the place where she lived. Natália Silva.
And now, for the last act, we have Paula Scarpin, and she will talk about an anti-hero, urban anti-hero, that she is a champion of for many years. Paula Scarpin. So I started working at Piauí the year that we were going to have the Pan American Games in Rio in 2007. And they gave me a mission of find, short stories for the website, for the magazine, of things related to the Pan American Games. And before, I ran all the way to the Pan Village. I went around the newspaper, see if there was any kind of detail, any article that could maybe be a good story for me. And then I remember I got this guy who was a medal collector of Pan American Games. Very specific, right? But, specificity is good for this kind of story. So I thought I found his name in the phone book, and I called him, and he was super nice, and he said, well, you know what, I can even talk to you about the medals, but I can't give you many details of each one of these details or send you pictures because I'm not close to them now. I'm inland in the rural area in another collection I have. I'm with my pigeon collection. Well, I lost complete interest on the medals at that moment. I talked to him for some time, and he raises pigeons for competitions. It's a speed competition between pigeons. And yes, I went to some of the tournaments, and then I was really focused on these competitions. And then after this deep dive I had in the world of pigeons, I never again could see pigeons in the same way. And I'm going to give you some of the important things. Did you know that the courier pigeon, the peace dove, and the pigeons are all the same thing? They're all Columba livia. Did you know that pigeons were domesticated at least 5,000 years ago? Did you know there are pigeons in every continent except Antarctica? Do you know that a pigeon can fly at a speed of up 180 kilometers per hour? And they're always oriented to do the same path, to go back to where they were born or raised. And not only the championships that were done based on this orientation that they have, but also the courier services. It's called pombo correio in Portuguese, carrier pigeon. They're fast, they're precise. That was guaranteed for many years their place in history as, top technology, state-of-the-art technology. Egyptians would use pigeons to say that a new pharaoh has gone to the throne. Greeks using pigeons to, talk about the results of Olympic Games. And the Chinese emperors, Roman Emperor Genghis Khan will use pigeons. So when Reuters, the Reuters news agency, was created in London in 1851, they raised pigeons in their newsroom. And then when journalists would travel outside of town, they would take pigeons, one or more pigeons, in their backpack, to send in all the news. But as technology changed, like the mail service, telegraphs, wire, transportation, railways, highways, airplanes, and even optic fiber, internet, 5G, so forth and so on, the pigeons were left behind. Outdated. We only have a few, the champions that were treated as athletes in the different pigeon raising areas, or maybe for those who actually raised with balanced water, clean water, and then anatomic perches. And most of them was, had to live in the streets and trying to eat those stepped-on gums. So, but the pigeons don't matter because they're everywhere. Wherever there are people, wherever there are cities, there they are, ready to eat whatever you throw. And little by little, they became the categories of the synanthropic animals, to use the terminology of the Zoonosis Control Center. It's the same one as rats, cockroaches. When João do Rio published the enchanting souls of the streets, he didn't talk about pigeons because no one was even considering a pigeon an urban issue. Remember that all the communication of the First World War that was already in the next century after he published this book depended on pigeons. Can you imagine? This will help you illustrate. But according to what João do Rio wrote about rats, he would say, I guess that today he would at least dedicate at least one chapter to pigeons. And considering the rats, I wouldn't like to read it anyways. But anyways, the fact is that since I published this article in Piauí in 2008, I became very attached. I have wooden pigeons, paper pigeons, the little plastic ones, the one that hop around. I have socks, T-shirts, eco bags, everything with pigeons. Everybody keeps sending me all the content and social networks, people that refer me to these websites. And this is how I reached this Instagram profile. Hi, look at the beautiful, this little girl. She sees, she flies. She's beautiful, right? But she's very innocent. She's really nice. And I want to find her a good owner. Maybe you want to adopt a beautiful pigeon. It's a beautiful pigeon. Yes, it is a profile for adoption of pigeons. Believe it or not. And since it was launched in 2021, once in a while, someone will send me this profile. Have you heard of this? And now that we have this opportunity, I said, well, that's it. I'm going to start talking about this the urban anti-hero. So I am Brena Braz, and I love birds. So once in a while, Brena's Instagram profile will go viral. I am an advertiser. I study marketing, and I can use it in my favor, right? So, we were sort of kidding around, and people will play with these. So people say, oh my God, you're so rude. And I say, no, not rude at all. My pecker is big. And then something, well, I'm going to do the adopt my pecker. So then it will go viral, and then people will see that, oh my God, well, it's not for fun. It's serious. Adopt my pecker. It's not exactly for fun. It's serious. It's an adoption of pigeons. It's for real. But Brenda uses this know-how of how making something go viral to actually make her project work. Now, I want to say that Black Hola, like Black Friday, Black Pecker Day, all the pigeons were adopted. So there's Black Hola. It's a Black Friday for adopt my pecker. How many animals do you have? Oh, now at this moment I have 10, but they're not. The 10 aren't mine. They come and go, right? They're here for adoption. I have 5 here for adoption. Today, Brena only have pigeons, but the entrance was through other birds. I had parakeets, and then she had another, the calopsite. I had calopsite pituco for 15 years. Her love for Pituco was so big that she created a YouTube channel. Today, we will explain to you how can you raise a calopsita, easily. So she took it so seriously that she studied all the details, the behavior, anatomy, specialized vets, that she became a reference in the area, in this arena. And she was interested in other birds, not exotic, such as, very expensive birds or whatever. She was only interested for the ones that she would see in the streets. And she really paid attention when she saw a bird that was hurt, needing some kind of care. And then I had benchivi and other birds and smaller birds. This is one detail. Pigeons are everywhere, right? Other birds we'll see once in a while, but pigeons is all the time. So we know what she's talking about, right? I haven't never seen a benchivi, hurt, but pigeons we see it all the time. Brena thought that it was a hypocrisy of making a distinction of what kind of bird she would rescue. But no, we consider pigeons like rats with wings. So the first one I was afraid to touch. Oh, I'm going to hold it. Am I going to get a disease? But then she had this rescuer in her. She wanted to do good, but she didn't treat the pigeons as she treated other birds. I had never brought a pigeon to my house. I would get a pigeon, I would send it to a vet and everything else. And then she saw one thing. My vet at the time, she had 2 pigeons that she had rescued in her house. And she had a very small daughter. Maybe 2 years old, and the girl would hold the pigeon, and I started, wow, isn't there a disease? Maybe it's not how people say. And then I asked the vet, what's this whole story about, birds and disease and pigeons? What can I catch? And the people always see things happening, they don't even know. They just keep repeating all this fake news. Oh, because doves or pigeons will transmit diseases, but no one knows anything about the disease, right? So the first thing that comes to mind, of course, is lice. And I'm going to say, well, I got a lot of lice in my life, but never from pigeons, always in kids in school, from another kid, never from a pigeon, not even rescuing from the streets in the worst situation you can imagine. Okay, so lice, let's say it's easy. Now you use permethrin, and that's it. But have you heard about the pigeon disease? It's cryptococcosis. It's a fungi. But this fungi is not on the dove. This fungi can be developed, can appear in the feces. of the dove, of the pigeon. So you have to have a certain condition for this fungus to develop. It's not just, you have the feces in your house and then you have Cryptococcus there. No, they like, dark, humid environments. The towers, the bell towers, you have like 200 pigeons there, all defecating there. And this is where Cryptococcus will develop. And also this same fungus can also be developed in the maybe feces from chicken, in a chicken coop, and even parrots or other birds. But people only link it to pigeons, that the pigeon itself has nothing to do with it. On the Adopt My Pecker Instagram, there's some stories explaining the whole cryptococcosis thing. But most say, the pecker, my pecker is rude, not me. So if doves will transmit a disease, every animal will be able to transmit a disease. Human beings will transmit lots of disease, actually, and the pandemic is here to show us, right? So it's easier for us to get some disease from another human and not a bird. And it's not only just looking at a pigeon, holding it, kissing the pigeon, that you will actually get any disease. So, they're like rats with the wings. No, that's, you better understand. Maybe people are just drinking magic mushrooms to think. So this image is, of course, artificial intelligence. Of course, you don't have mice with wings. But most of her posts on Instagram are just reports of different rescues. I would like to tell you a little bit about the story, this little baby here. It was a Saturday. I was with my husband, my boyfriend, and we saw these pigeons. I said, well, stop the car here. I'm going to put some corn for these pigeons. And the pigeons were no longer there when we stopped. There were only this one. Well, he was sort of, falling apart. He was walking sort of wobbly. He like a zombie. And I said, well, stop. I'm not going to see him. I'm not going to see him. No, I can't. I have no longer space to put in pigeons. And then where he was like, a construction site in the middle of the street. And he wasn't able to fly. He has a fractured wing. His back foot was twisted, and he was stepping on his back finger because he had a sort of a tourniquet. His foot was all wrapped around, and that it was doing a tourniquet on his foot. So he was twisted, and he was stepping on his back finger. And then what I would like to say is this: and now, son of a bitch, fuck me. How can the animal, it's such a baby, it's a little baby. He just arrived on this planet and his life is shit. It's shit. And this has really touched me. It was a little baby, an innocent little thing. What did he do to the world to deserve this? This is their life. It's very... They suffer. They feel all the pain. They get, they don't have what to eat. Can you imagine this little baby, a little baby going through all this? So yes, if you hear me now, maybe I hope I touch your hearts, and you will help adopt, and you will see pigeons with new eyes. Oh my God, they suffer so much. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm impacted by these pigeons that are all hurt. Yeah, because as Brenda said, they are domesticated animals, like a cat, like a dog. Well, actually, cat, even more than cats, because cats were never domesticated, right? But pigeons, yes, they were there. They were even providing a service for mankind with all their athletic potential, truly. So why is it okay to ignore the suffering of these animals? This is Zapatex. Zapatex, if you don't know, it was found in a bar. And I thought there was something wrong with Zapatex. It was a bird that is not a nocturnal habits, trying to find food at 10. I said, this animal is not being able to see. Well, he actually wasn't able to fly. So we helped him, and now he's like a super flying. He's an heterotype macho. But when he came here, when I rescued this pigeon, he was a baby. And so this is now, I don't want to give him back to the streets because he knows nothing. He's not streetwise, He doesn't know how to escape from cars. And I'm afraid that this boy will really will be too tough. Do you let them go afterwards? Yes, actually, yes. Well, most of them, I will let them go, put them back in the streets, and I will let them go. Today, I'm a bit careful. There are two here at home that could be let go, freed. But you can see that he's like bathing in clean water, drinking clean water in the street. He will never drink clean water. They will drink water from radiator, and very poor conditions. You can see the awful conditions they have in the streets. It's really bad. And the water they have to drink, they will eat whatever is left there, trash. And so I just see them. They're so pretty, so nice, so clean, and I pity them. I said, no, I'm going to put this to adoption. So if you wish to adopt a pretty little creature such as this one, this is the time. He's not cute. He's a kind of crazy bird, but this is now. So what kind of person will come to you? So people that are crazier than I am, right? Well, you see that person's profile and you say, well, I want to adopt a pigeon. You see that the person is, that has know-how to adopt a pigeon, but you see that person is kind of nuts, and that their hair is all over, that's going to work for them because they're crazy as I am. So Brenna, have you seen, she lives in Belo Horizonte. She's from the state of Minas. So the sort of crazy, if the adopter is from Belo Horizonte, she will take it personally to them. But she also sends them by plane to anywhere where you have direct flights from BH. She will go to the terminal, and there's a whole scheme of transporting a live cargo, more for animals to be killed or for trade of maybe dogs. But I can imagine the people from the cargo terminal seeing Brenna coming in with these pigeons in cages. So those who adopt, I want to know if you have like a screen in your home. No, you're not going to let them go. Come on, Instagram say adopt my pecker. So if you're going to let it go, I would say, let my pecker fly. But if not, I would do it myself. So, it will come back if I let it go. No, it's not. It will go back to whatever place he was raised. So, because it's for you who wants to have a bird in your home. So you can't let it go. You can't let your pecker fly because it will try to go back to wherever he was raised. He will always go back to where he was raised. In the case, to that square in Belo Horizonte, in Minas, to whatever he was raised. And even if you're feeding him well, it's stronger than the pigeon. He will always go back to where he was raised. So scientists try to understand for many years how the hell do they do that. There are many hypotheses, maybe scent, Earth magnetism, sun as a reference, but none of these hypotheses will work on itself. The most probable thing is that they will localize by a mixture of all these different abilities and skills. The skills that were developed and improved through genetic improvement for millions and millions of years of domestication. Less than a century that we got used to think about that pigeons should live in the streets. But Brenna is challenging that notion. She's bringing the urban anti-hero back home.
Paulo Scarpin.
Fica aí.
Esse foi o Rádio Novelo
This was
Apresenta
Radio
ao vivo
Novelo
na
Apresenta
Flip.
live at Flip.
Muito obrigada a todo
Thank you
mundo que
very
está
much
aqui
for everyone
prestigiando
who
o
is
nosso
here,
trabalho nesse auditório e também no auditório
watching
da praça.
us in this
Quem
auditorium
ouve
and
a Rádio Novelo
also
Apresenta toda semana
outside
até o
there
final,
at the square.
sabe
Those
que tem
that
muita
listen to
gente
Radio Novelo
trabalhando para
Apresenta
botar o
every
podcast no ar.
week
E
until the
cada
end
uma
knows
dessas
that there is a
pessoas
lot of
colaborou
work involved
demais
in
nessa mega
airing the
operação
podcast,
de
and
fazer esse
many
ao vivo.
people contributed a
Aqui no
lot
palco,
for
a
this
gente
mega
tem
operation.
a
On
Paula
the stage, we
Scarpin,
have Paula
a Flora
Scarpin,
Thomson Deveaux,
Flora Thomson Deveaux,
a Natália Silva,
Natália
e o Vitor
Silva,
Hugo
and
Brandalise.
Vitor Hugo Brandalise.
Esses são os que contaram histórias.
Those were those who told the stories.
Peraí, gente, tem mais gente.
Wait, there's more people.
Tem que falar dos outros. Tem também a Bia
Let me
Guimarães,
tell you about the
ali no
others.
controle
There's
das
also Bia
gravações,
Guimarães controlling
jogando
recordings,
junto com a super Stela Nesrine,
working with
que adaptou.
Stela Nesrine, who adapted.
A Stela que adaptou o
Stella
desenho de som para
adapted
poder
the
fazer tudo
sound
ao vivo aqui
design
para
so
vocês
that
aqui
we
no
could
palco.
do everything
Mas
live
fora
for
do
you
palco,
here on the
né,
stage,
nos
but outside the
bastidores, ou lá na
stage,
casa de
in
cada um,
the
tem muita
backstage,
gente da
or
Novelo que ajudou a
from
botar isso de
people's
pé.
home, there are many people
E
from
muitas
Novelo
dessas
that
pessoas estão
helped
aqui
us
agora, se
organizing
quiserem
it, and
conhecer
many of
depois,
those people are here
procura.
today.
Então tem a Marcela
If you want to meet
Casaca.
them, you can look at them. There's Marcela Casaca.
É. A Évelin Argenta, Sara Zobel,
Évelin
Carol
Argenta,
Pires,
Sara Zobel, Carol Pires,
a Bárbara Rubira, a
Bárbara
Carolina
Rubira,
Moraes,
Carolina
que tá ali.
Moraes,
A Júlia Matos, a
Júlia
Bia Ribeiro, que
Matos,
está no
Bia
comando das
Ribeiro,
imagens ali em cima.
who is
O Gustavo
running the
Nascimento,
videos,
a
Gustavo
Tainá Nogueira,
Nascimento,
que está
Tainá
aqui,
Nogueira,
a Lara Martins,
Lara
que está ali,
Martins,
e a Isabel
and
de
Isabel
Santana,
de
que
Santana,
tá ali, que
who
está
is
ali.
over there.
E a Ju Jäger, que está aqui também.
And Julia
A Ashley
Egger
Calvo, que
also.
foi a produtora, que colocou
Ashley
tudo isso
Culver,
aqui
the
de pé, que
producer
está,
who
não sei aonde,
organized
mas
all
está
of
aqui
this.
em
I don't
algum
know where
lugar.
she is, but she's here somewhere.
Maravilhosa. Então,
Wonderful.
super... E eu já falei, Gustavo.
And
Você não
Gustavo,
ouviu porque o pessoal
I
estava
already
animado,
told
então você
about
não
you,
ouviu.
Gustavo, but they were
O Gustavo
clapping so
Nascimento é que
loud. So
faz o
Gustavo
design pra
Nascimento
gente, assim,
is
esse
the designer.
gênio das imagens que vocês
He's
viram.
an image
A gente queria
genius,
dar
so we
super
would like to
agradecimento, por favor, para a
say thank you
curadora Ana
to
Lima
the
Cecílio
curator
pelo
Ana Lima
convite
Cecílio
e toda a
and for
organização da
the
Flip,
invitation, as well as thanking the
pelo convite e
organization
pelo
of the
apoio
Flip
também
for the
que deram pra
invitation and
gente. E
for
essas
all the
histórias que vocês
support
ouviram
they
aqui vão ao ar
gave
na
us, and the
próxima
stories that you
quinta-feira,
heard here will
junto
be
com uma
aired
reportagem
next
inédita da
Thursday with
Evelyn,
a
que não pôde
first
estar aqui com a
time
gente hoje
story
porque ela
by
está gravidona,
Evelyn, and
então
she
não pôde
couldn't be
vir.
here with
E é
us because
sobre
she is
bueiros.
pregnant,
Então,
and it's
não
about
percam,
manholes.
porque é ótima
And
também.
so,
E obrigada
listen
demais.